All right. Good morning, friends. It's so good to have you here. Thank you for joining in week 7 of our weight loss class. I am so excited to coach today and to share the concepts that we have. If you've not been able to read your paperwork, I would encourage you to please do so. This week is such a valuable week in fueling us in a beautiful way with really powerful concepts and tools. So I'm excited to share this. I'm going to make a conscious effort to leave time on the end so I can take some Q&A and be a little more generous in that space. Additionally, I want to let you know I have a little bonus for you. This Wednesday evening at, I'm going to choose 5 o'clock. This Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock, I want to open up a live coaching session. I will email out some details where we can just do some group open Q&A and coaching experiences. There's a lot of power that comes in watching other people get coached, to see the model in action with our coaching friends, and to learn from one another. This is one of my greatest resources that I take advantage with peers, with certified coaches, with students of the work. And so I want to make this available for you as well. Wednesday, 5 o'clock Pacific time, I will send you all the details. So I hope that you will look forward to joining me. I'm going to extend the invitation to friends in my area as well. So we may have new and familiar faces and names that also jump in and take advantage. I will record this especially for all of our lovely friends in the weight loss group, because while you aren't able to necessarily participate live, it may be something that you'll enjoy doing a recap on. Okay, let me share my screen and we will get started. Thank you always for being so patient as I figure out these details. All right, Jillian, will you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing my screen that says week 6? Everything looks good? Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, and we're going to go into present. There we go. All right. Oops. Okay. All right, a quick recap in our concepts from week 6. If you could please take the time and consideration to complete your week 7 Google form, I always appreciate that. Excuse me. Provides me such valuable feedback, and it's such a great tool for me to use in communicating to the group what I need you to know as we're in this week and as we're pressing forward. So please look to our week 7 form for some important questions, and I will print that prior to our one-on-one appointments, and I strive very diligently to review those in advance of our appointments, because a lot of times it opens the door up for valuable conversation and valuable coaching that impacts you in a deeper and more significant way. We were able to review success strategies to support you in your weight loss space, and I hope that those tools are proving to be of a benefit as you're moving forward and embracing and practicing all that we have learned and discovered and experienced so far. Again, we reaffirmed the difference between our feelings and our sensations, knowing that our feelings comes from our thoughts, and a lot of times we can redirect our feelings with just a little tweak and a little adjustment, and also pausing to ask ourselves, is this feeling or thought true, or am I really just entertaining a little bit of mind drama? And sometimes it's just as simple as that in order to alter our course and continue us on the path of success. We discussed in depth the different layers of feelings and emotions and the way that contrast can bless our lives. And specifically, we spoke to how indulgent emotions can actually prove to kind of like be a boat anchor that we tend to carry around and prove to be a real obstacle. So when we're willing to look in the mirror and become a little bit more raw and vulnerable, that's when we can work through and process these indulgent emotions that we've owned and carried for years, and they really don't serve us in an abundant way. And so we want to be able to part ways with these indulgent emotions. And for many of you, we've been doing this work privately in our one-on-one appointments, and I think that you're starting to really feel the power of how coaching can release you from those stories and those feelings that are keeping you trapped and stuck in your life. Again, thoughts always create our emotions, and the more comfortable and familiar and well-versed we come into owning and accepting this truth, then the more freedom we experience. And of course, processing our emotions is always the best way to difficult circumstances, situations, people, conversations, and our own personal well-being. When we're willing to look at things and process them rather than restrict, avoid, pretend, react, all those other choices, then that's when we can truly make progress in our lives and see new and better results. Okay, this week we are talking about buffering. Now, buffering is kind of an unusual term, but it's really not that unfamiliar. Our computers tend to buffer. And I think that when we think about our computer and we see our computer spinning and trying to access a file with no progress, then the term really makes sense. We as human beings also tend to buffer. We choose defeating behaviors, indulgent behaviors that keep us stuck and spinning. And while we think that they're serving us in an abundant way, they really create a net negative effect in our lives. I gave you some examples in the paperwork about what some of our go-to buffering habits can be. But as we can see on the screen, it can be, video games, overeating with sugar and flour, and even just the quantity of food, spending money, and even working can be a buffering activity of choice. While we think it might be something that's positive, when it's out of balance, it does not serve us well, and it can have a net negative in our lives. Interestingly enough, overall, as a society, we get very mixed messages when it comes to buffering and the way that we should be running our lives. Unfortunately, I think we tend to be a little top-heavy in this message, in that we get told that we're entitled to do what we please. We're entitled to go drink and be merry. We're entitled to eat whatever we want, and that there aren't any consequences. And it's from these mixed messages that a lot of times we indulge and we feel at liberty to do the things that work against us. We seek for immediate gratification because we believe that's going to solve our problems and make us feel better. It's kind of like trying to put a Band-Aid over a gash or a gaping wound in our arm. We're not willing to look at and address the real source of our pain, but we want to cover it. And the immediate gratification is that temporary Band-Aid that we seek out in order to make ourselves feel better and cover what really is at the heart of the issue in our lives. We're told that the rules don't apply to us and that we're the exception, and that we should be able to skirt around the rules and not have any negative implications or negative consequences. We're told to ask forgiveness rather than permission. And we also are led to believe that everyone performs and makes these choices and runs their lives in this way. It's simply not true. It's simply not true. And stepping into adulthood helps us to recognize that these are all false premises, false philosophies that come from society and can come through our media outlets, and that we have to really be more proactive in choosing how to be better individuals for our own sake, in becoming the better version of who we want to be. Now, none of these things are bad at the core of them. Shopping is a wonderful activity. Food, video games, sleeping, they're all wonderful and useful activities. But we have to make sure, again, that they're in balance. And in seeking to have an appropriate balance of these activities in our lives and not slip into the side of buffering, we need to ask ourselves, why am I using this activity in my life? How is this activity serving me or hindering me? And it's when these activities get out of balance that we experience the net negative of the activity that we're engaging in. Okay. Now, as human beings, though, interestingly enough, we have a hormone, a chemical that runs through our body known as dopamine. And dopamine is triggered by our brain and sends a signal throughout our brain and into our bodies of reward and pleasure. It's a good thing. Dopamine is a positive thing. It also can be a negative thing, though, when our lives are out of balance. Dopamine plays a very important role, and because of dopamine, we seek out to do things for our betterment. Likewise, we also can do things that are to our detriment. So dopamine is that feel-good chemical that resides within our brain and stimulates us to do things that seek pleasure and will bring reward. Without dopamine, we wouldn't accomplish a lot of the good that we do have in our lives. We wouldn't exercise. We wouldn't eat well. We wouldn't reproduce and have children. We wouldn't work hard. So dopamine can present us with a lot of beautiful byproducts in our lives. And that's where we want to like direct and lead and engage with dopamine. Dopamine is released in large amounts. It creates those feelings of desire, pleasure, and reward, and it fuels us to repeat our behaviors. Now, this is true with both the positive and the negative choices of our lives. So we want to be very thoughtful to the way that dopamine is interfacing with us and how we're allowing it to govern our lives and the choices that we're making. Of course, we're all capable of making thoughtful and responsible choices. But when we're engaging that dopamine in a negative way and we're seeking that high and we're seeking that hit from this natural feel-good chemical, then it can be to our detriment. So it's very important that we kind of become aware of how we're engaging with dopamine in our lives. As you all know, I've taken up running in the last year, and I tell you, I love the dopamine hit that I get from running. In fact, it encourages me, it fuels me, and it creates more desire for me to go and continue to run. So there's a beautiful byproduct of the way dopamine can serve us. Unfortunately, dopamine also can lead many of us down the path of destruction. This is why we see addiction so rampant in our society, because people get that hit from the dopamine in believing that watching excess amounts of porn is the way that they're going to satisfy their desire and their need for a sexual relationship. Rather than keeping it in the context of healthy and balanced, it's out of balance. Okay, if you have questions on that, we can address them here at the end. I think all of us probably get a really good idea and a clear understanding of the value of engaging in the positive reinforcement that comes from this beautiful chemical that's available to us. And we just want to be thoughtful to the negative role that it can play if we're out of balance. I've included a link there on the bottom of this slide to a really fantastic article that speaks to the ways to like support, nurture, and increase the dopamine levels in our lives. So we're having lots of beautiful byproducts from this. So if you want to engage in that and like take a moment to read it, I would encourage you to do so. It's really a fantastic read. And it's pretty short as well. I always like to seek out things that I can kind of like take in a moment and in a quick snapshot because life's busy. So I found this one to be of high value, and that's why I wanted to share it with you as well. Now, interestingly enough, in the paperwork I sent you as well, I spoke to the fact that the majority of the time when people are struggling with their weight, it's not because they have a physiological problem. We are not overweight more often than not because of a disorder or because of a hormone imbalance. The majority of the time when people are overweight and taking in too much food and putting on weight, it's because something is not working in their lives. I share this picture with you of me where I'm sitting in this turquoise top because when I look at it, I have such mixed emotions and I actually feel quite a bit of sadness. This is a reflection of me a few years ago in my life when things were out of balance. My life was not working. Interestingly enough, prior to this year, I'm going to say that this is probably around 2016. Prior to this year, a few years back, if we were to look into my history, I was doing a great job in maintaining an ideal weight. I would give or take the same 5 pounds. And you know, that's pretty normal in our adult lives to give and take the same 3 to 5, 8 pounds. We kind of keep ourselves in a healthy check. And you know what? My life was in balance at that time prior to when this picture was taken. But then things got out of balance and started to not work well for me. I was struggling with some of the relationships that were in my life. I was struggling with a work-time balance, and I was really unhappy in the way that I was having to contribute my time into a work endeavor that wasn't fulfilling and bringing me lots of joy. I wasn't happy with the way that I was showing up as a mother. I was definitely not happy with the way that I was showing up for myself. And so wouldn't you know it, slowly but surely the weight started to come on. And pretty soon I found myself in this place of despair. My life wasn't working well. I was putting a Band-Aid on top of an open wound that really required more attention than what I was willing to give it. And it's kind of like it's like the analogy of having an onion, right? there's so many layers that exist within an onion. And on the surface, we just see this whole piece of vegetable. We see this one vegetable, it's surrounded in one layer, and we believe, oh, that's all there is to it. If you were to give an onion to a young 5 or 6-year-old child, they wouldn't know what to expect when they open that onion. But as we grow and mature in our lives, we know that, we are made up of so many layers. There are so many different things and components that come into our lives and that are in play in our lives that make us who we are. And so it is like the layers of the onion. And when we aren't taking care of ourselves from a place of love, compassion, support, curiosity, well-being, and self-development, then things get out of alignment, and pretty soon we're unhappy. I feel like this picture of me really represents, it represents one of the lowest points of my life. And while I'm not happy about that, and it makes me feel sad when I look at that, and I think I have feelings of sadness and compassion towards the woman that I was back in that photo, it also is a great visual representation of truly how disconnected I was with myself and my life. And it required a lot of work for me to come out of that space. Now, interestingly enough, we all have opportunities to feel unhappiness, insecurity, frustration, and disconnect. It's part of what life offers. It's part of the growing opportunities which life presents because of so many different components. It can be because of the relationships in our lives. It can be because of the identities that we believe we have to hold on to, whether they be positive or negative. It can be because of, maybe some financial imbalance in our lives. We all have opportunities for struggle and growth. And oftentimes it's not pleasant. And it's because of these array of feelings that we tend to put on the weight, because we're not coping with them well, we're not processing them well, and we're not doing the work that's required in order to move through them, handle and manage them appropriately. A lot of times I like to think of this kind of experience as the broken arm syndrome. Now, when we have a broken bone in our body automatically alerts us that something has gone terribly wrong and that we're experiencing a lot of pain and discomfort. But unless we're willing to really stop and identify what's going on and get to the cause of that pain, oftentimes we want to just pretend that there's nothing wrong. We may take an aspirin and we may be, under the impression of, oh, this pain is going to go away if I just take an aspirin. I'll be fine. I can continue to move forward. Everything's going to be fine. Or maybe we just baby the arm a little bit and we just kind of we're willing to look at it for a moment, but then our attention it's diverted to something else that needs our attention in our lives. And we may be like, you know what, that can wait. I know it's uncomfortable right now and in this moment, but I have other things that need my attention. And I'm going to, I need to take care of this work project. I need to take care of my children. I need to make sure I get signed up on the volunteer form. Otherwise, I'm not going to get my hours in that are required for volunteering at the school. There's a whole array of different things that demand our attention. And so sometimes we'll do a check-in on our pain for just a moment, but then we get distracted by the squirrels in our lives that, are far more entertaining and engaging than looking at the source of our pain. The way that we take care of our broken arm, though, is to really spend time in addressing what's wrong. We have to go to the doctor. We have to have an x-ray taken. We need to be willing to experience that discomfort of having the arm reset and put into alignment so that it can start to heal. And so it is with our lives and our emotions and working through the discomfort of loneliness, frustration, the relationships that are challenging, our false identities that don't serve us, the indulgent emotions that don't serve us. And so it's by getting to the source of the pain through thought management, through good, well self-care practices that we can release ourselves from this discomfort and actually make progress. That's why so many of us struggle with our weight. It's not because it's a physical imbalance. It's because something is going on that needs our attention. It's calling for our attention, and we need to actually interrupt the cycle, okay? That's the beautiful thing of what we're learning in this space and in conjunction with our weight loss tools. The coaching side of this experience is that we're learning how to interrupt that cycle of negativity. We're learning how to interrupt that downward spiral that's keeping us in a place of stagnation. And interestingly enough, as we start to make progress with our weight, it actually empowers us to make progress with our thought management, with our daily journaling exercises, with our communication, with the internal dialogue that we practice and repeat in our minds. That's the beautiful gift of coaching in the model and our thought download work. It really interrupts this cycle. It empowers us to choose better. It empowers us to do better. And it also teaches us that, guess what? Our thoughts are optional. Our thoughts are not true, not always true. And it's a beautiful way to look at our lives through a new lens, with a new perspective, and be able to embrace something better, even one step up and slightly better, and take on a new disposition and recognize that we have more worth than what we're actually acknowledging and extending to ourselves. Okay. I had an opportunity to visit with a friend, and I've used this analogy a lot in coaching. And so it's so interesting that in our society and in our lives, we often attach so much of our value to our weight and how we look, and whether we are fitting into that size 8, and whether we have beautiful clothes and our hair looks good and our makeup's done so beautifully. And you know what? Interestingly enough, that's only one component of who we are as individuals. I'm sorry I didn't put this slide in there, but just hang tight with me for a moment. I want you to envision a bicycle wheel, okay? A bicycle wheel is made up of so many different spokes, and we are the wheel. Now, as this wheel, as a complete person, a divine, beautiful, whole person, there are so many components that make us who we are. Our weight is only one spoke on the wheel, only one. We have so many other gifts and talents that we offer and contribute to the world in beautiful ways. Our sense of humor, the amount of service that we give, the patience we extend toward the relationships that we hold, our unconditional love that we offer our children, the way that we support one another through listening ear and a friendly conversation, the way that we honor the time that we give ourselves, the way that we take care of our homes, the way that we take care of our family members, the way that we show up as an employee within our jobs. These are all the components that come into play that make us who we are. Friends, I really want to remind you that the weight that we carry on our bodies, it doesn't have true meaning until we attach a meaning to it. It is only one spoke on the wheel of who we are. We are made up of so many other abundant and beautiful components and dynamics. Really acknowledge yourself in this space and allow yourself to recognize all the different ways that you show up and the different parts of who you are that make you a complete person. Keep that visual in mind with you this week, especially as we're working forward and pressing forward with our goals. Really keep that in mind, that you are a whole and complete person, and that this journey in losing weight, it's just one way of showing up for yourself, but you show up for yourself in so many other amazing ways of being a beautiful and whole person. Okay. Thank you for letting me entertain that small tangent. All right. So the beauty of the model and the coaching experience is that it allows us and it empowers us to interrupt those negative downward cycles that we create in our lives. And it allows us to choose our thoughts with power. It allows us to choose our emotions on purpose. And we have that privilege of doing so because we are human beings and we know how to engage our higher brain. And it helps us to create a more beautiful and fulfilling and rich journey in our human experience. In order to do this, in order to interrupt the cycle and to really step into who we want to be, though, we have to nurture our well-being. Now, we just can't hope and wish to have a beautiful plant growing in our yard. It requires that we find good soil. It requires that we plant seeds. It requires that we nourish the soil and the seed with water, with fertilizer, and with sunshine. It requires an active investment. And this is how we start to transition from a space of despair into a space of happiness, peace, joy, fulfillment, ambition, and motivation, right? We just can't wish for these things to happen. We have to really take action, purposeful action, in really embracing and owning these different components of well-being. And this is what I've been inviting you to do through the whole process. When we start to really see ourselves as that complete wheel and recognize that we are made up of so many different attributes, that's when we want to take more of that beautiful, rich soil into our lives. That's when we want to plant more colorful and vibrant seeds that are going to make for a rich and beautiful garden. That's when we're going to bring in the water and recognize I matter. I deserve to be on the list. I need nourishment, and I need to really take care of myself and make the time and create the space in order to nourish the person I want to be. And from this feeling of well-being and starting to see our little plant grow and break through the surface and rise up and become a beautiful plant in a beautiful garden, that's when we're tapping into that dopamine in a really positive way. We're really like creating a beautiful cycle that can perpetuate and serve us and help us to grow and gain traction in our lives. It's so rewarding. It's just so rewarding, friends. And yet it requires effort. It requires diligent effort and small acts of service that we give to ourselves. We can't serve others from an empty space. We can't serve others when our bucket is not full. And so we must contribute to our bucket of wellness in order to serve ourselves first and then serve others in our lives, okay? Now, the beautiful thing about investing in our well-being is that also helps to foster our self-confidence. Last week, when I invited everyone to identify an emotion that they would like to have more coaching on, and an emotion that they wanted to really up-level in their lives and experience a deeper relationship with, confidence was the one that was shared back to me most often. Confidence is one of my favorite emotions. I love confidence. I love a healthy, positive, abundant amount of self-confidence. And confidence is different than arrogance. I am sure that you guys have experienced both a genuine sense of confidence when you've engaged with someone and also the false arrogance that can exist when you've engaged with someone different. Okay, confidence comes from a place that's deep within. It's a powerful and it's an attractive attribute. In fact, I think anyone that has a real healthy sense of self-confidence always shows up as the most attractive and the most powerful person in their space. Whether they're truly physically attractive or not, it doesn't even matter. Have you met someone that has had an abundance of self-confidence? Maybe they're not truly attractive on the outside, but you're drawn to them. They're magnetic. You feel like you want to be around them, and they're a pleasure to be around. They're enjoyable to be around. It doesn't even matter if they're physically attractive or not, because that genuine wealth that springs forth from their self-confidence is just like so inviting. And it's like we want to be a part of it. We want to engage with it, and we want it to rub off on us as well. So I'm sure you've had experience in both arenas. Arrogance is very shallow. It can't be sustained for long, and you can see through it pretty quickly. People who are arrogant and don't have a true sense of self-confidence, they usually reveal their true colors within a very short window of time. And, maybe it's their attempt to be practicing and engaging in self-confidence, and they want to show up in that space, but they really haven't done the work, in my opinion. They really haven't done the work to develop and foster that self-love that's required in order to build and develop the confidence that is so genuine and is so attractive and is so desirable for all of us in our lives. Now, each of us has a confidence account, okay? We have a scale in our lives where we're making deposits. We're either making deposits into the confidence account and we're gaining more through the self-care that we do each and every day the positive words that we choose to have in our mind, the ways we give in service and time and love and support. Or we have the opposite side of the account, which is where we are making withdrawals and we're like dipping into the self-confidence. Whenever we don't honor the commitments that we make for ourselves, that's like taking money out of our confidence account. When we choose to shortchange ourselves and we don't put ourselves on that priority list, we're taking money out of our self-confidence account, okay? And you know what? This account is always ebbing and flowing. It's always going up and down to some degree. Hopefully we're keeping it more in the positive and we're keeping a nice steady balance in the side of making positive deposits. Our self-confidence account can be built up through the smallest of actions. And when we gain evidence, when we create evidence on that side of making those deposits regularly, pretty soon we have a cumulative effect. It's like a snowball effect. And our confidence starts to grow and it starts to serve us in a beautiful way. And then when we have a moment of making a withdrawal from our confidence account, it doesn't have to have such a negative impact. We can actually just like pause for a moment and be like, oh yeah, I always feel better when I honor my protocol. And now I'm reminded that when I get off track, it doesn't feel good. And I really don't love the result of being off track. Okay, thanks for the learning opportunity. I don't have to spend any further time here. I can go ahead and just recognize that this is the lesson I'm supposed to learn in this moment. And I'm going to come back into the side of making deposits. So the way that we build our confidence is by making those small and consistent choices. I absolutely promise you, when you get clear and when you get committed to doing one thing in your life, one thing, and you honor that, even the smallest commitment of maybe going to bed at 9 o'clock every night, or getting up at 6 o'clock the first time your alarm rings, or increasing that water and making sure that you're getting enough water into your eating window and your fasting window within the day. When you make that commitment to one thing and you honor it, wow, it's so powerful. It really is like a springboard and it helps you to really up level your confidence and build upon that confidence. And pretty soon you're going to want to do more. You're going to want to give to yourself in a more abundant way. And you're going to start building up that evidence and making those deposits so that you can have the byproducts of the confidence that's going to come. Now, confidence is an emotion. Interestingly enough, none of us are born with more or less self-confidence than another. It's an emotion that we nurture. It's an emotion that we choose. It's an emotion that we embrace and that we practice. And the more that we choose this and the more that we practice this from a healthy, positive place, the more it will grow. It's just like watering that plant. When we're taking action and we're putting water and we're giving sunlight and we're bringing fertilizer into our space of building our confidence, it's going to bloom. And we're going to have a beautiful plant. We're going to have a beautiful byproduct of our confidence increasing. And you know, initially when we're practicing this, it can be a little uncomfortable. And that's normal. I don't want you to shy away from it, but rather lean into it, step into it and embrace it. And maybe a way that you choose to build that confidence is by choosing to be a little bit more outgoing. Maybe you have a social opportunity that's going to come around the corner where you can show up and be the first one to make conversation with new people in the room. Maybe you can be the first one to extend a compliment to somebody else. It's a really small act, but the way that it serves you and the way that it fuels you because of taking that initiative is so amazing. It's so magnificent, and it's really going to just like multiply your confidence. So don't be afraid to engage with confidence. Rather, lean into it and find that one technique that you can use to practice and then own that and work on acquiring and building your self-confidence. It will take practice, but it's not impossible. And oftentimes when you look at the people in your lives and you see people that you think have a lot of self-confidence, chances are good that they do, but they probably also had to learn how to come into that space and own that and nurture it and develop it. We're not just naturally given an abundance of self-confidence because it was a genetic trait that we were born with. It's something that's acquired, and all of us can do this. To assure you all that you already have experience with confidence. We already have experience in building self-confidence because we have engaged in doing new things. We've done things that have asked us to step out of our box and step into the space of building and nurturing our self-confidence. I'm going to share a process with you in a moment that will take you through the step-by-step process of building confidence. But I want you to pause for just a moment and ask yourself, do you remember the first time that you got on a bicycle? Was it scary? Did you know how to do it? No, none of us know how to ride bicycles when we come into this world. We have to step into a space of the unknown and embrace the unknown and allow ourselves to experience something new. We have to be willing to be courageous. We have to be willing to get committed, and we need to actually practice trying something new, just like riding a bike. And now, would any of us think twice about getting on a bicycle going around the block? Probably not. It's a skill that we've mastered. It's a skill that we're comfortable with, and it's a skill that we enjoy. Likewise, driving a car. Think about when you were 16 years old and you got your driver's license. Was it new and scary? Yes. Were there things that we had to learn and different obstacles and different rules that we had to figure out and navigate? Yes. Did we acquire that skill through practice and being willing to be vulnerable and to put ourselves out there? Yes. Just like with confidence and driving a car, it requires practice, and the more we do it and the more we engage with it, the more solid we become in that skill set, and the stronger it becomes, and the more of a foundational piece of who we are and who we want to be, the more of a foundational piece it becomes. It comes into our being as a character trait and part of our personality. Would anyone think twice now about getting in the car and going to the grocery store? I don't think so. It's just something that we do. We do it automatically. We own it. We're comfortable with it. It's familiar. It's well practiced, and we can execute. And so it is with confidence. Now, sometimes we forget the strengths that we have, which lie within. And that's why the 4-step process I'm going to teach you will help you recall the ways that we can access and tap into our self-confidence. We all have self-confidence. It's just a matter of where it's sitting on that spectrum. Are we down in the lower end of the spectrum where it needs more fuel, it needs more nurturing, it needs more support? Are we in the middle place of that spectrum where, you know what, it just kind of depends on the day and how we're feeling and what our situation is? Or do we have an abundance of confidence where it's always at a 10? It's nice and full, and we can handle anything that comes our way. Ask yourself for a moment where you fall within that spectrum, and then think about where you want to be on that spectrum as we look at the 4 steps to building self-confidence. Now, the way that we build self-confidence is by working these 4 steps over and over again. The first thing that we do is we need to commit. We need to identify where it is in our lives that we want to build confidence. And then we need to get committed to our activity or to our character trait that we're trying to develop, or that, social component of maybe putting ourselves out there and having deepening friendships or building more friendships. The first component is commitment. Once we get on board and commit to ourselves to building our confidence, then that leads us to step into courage. We ask ourselves to do the uncomfortable. We ask ourselves to be willing, to be vulnerable, and to have new experiences that require courage. From this place of courage, then we engage with our capability, okay? We believe that we are capable, and we take action to prove our capability. We actually start doing what we say we're going to do. And we show up and we take those steps, and we really we are purposeful in tapping into the reserve that we have of capability, and then building upon and growing our capability. And then finally, the byproduct of doing these first 3 steps is that we create more evidence and we create more confidence in our experiences. So let me give you a concrete example. A year ago, as I said, I picked up running, and I decided that this was something that was really important to me. And I hadn't been running for years and years, and I knew that this was going to require a commitment. I knew I wanted to build my confidence in running, and that this was something that was important to me. So it was an activity that I identified, and I made a commitment. I grabbed a calendar, I structured out a running plan, and I actually paid the money and put my name down on a list for a community race. I decided that a 5K would be the perfect place to start. So I engaged my commitment by getting myself committed to an activity and to a schedule and to myself. From this place of commitment, I stepped into courage. I actually had to go buy the running shoes. I actually had to put on my workout clothes and get myself out the door. I had to do the uncomfortable, and it required courage for me to start getting out of my box of familiarity and becoming acquainted with discomfort, but also acquainted with something new. It required courage. From this place of buying the running shoes, putting on the workout clothes, honoring my schedule and going outside and doing my run, then I was building upon my capability. I knew that I was physically capable of doing these things, but boy, it was hard. I had to tap into my reserve of commitment, courage, and strength and experience as well. I had to really step into my space of capability and believe that I could get prepared for this 5K. Now, because I hadn't been running at all and I was still quite overweight, I had to really lean into my capability of today I'm going to do half a mile, and I'm going to do a half a mile through the end of this week. When I've accomplished half a mile, I'm going to bring it up to a mile, and I'm going to increase my capability by asking myself to stretch and grow and do more. So again, I had to lean on my commitment, my courage, and then I had to tap that capability once again. After that first week was done and I felt ready to transition into a greater space, into a greater level of running, I had to ask for more capability. I had to build upon my capability. I had mastered half a mile, and now I was ready to take it to the next level and engage with a mile. And by repeating this process with the first 3 steps, of course I was building confidence, but I was deepening my commitment to myself. I was getting more comfortable and familiar and acquainted with courage. I was strengthening my capability, and I was creating more evidence on my side that I could do these things. And then, of course, I was building my confidence and putting those small deposits into the account to support myself in doing what I wanted to do. Sure enough, after I had practiced these 4 steps over and over again and really leaned on them and allowed them to serve me, I was able to accomplish my goal. I was able to go to the community race a day after my birthday. I was able to put on my running shoes with confidence, and I was able to show up and do the run. Interestingly enough, there was a senior citizen who I ended up kind of like keeping pace with. I kid you not. I think the man was like probably in his late 70s or his early 80s. And interestingly enough, he would look over his shoulder through the majority of the race to ensure that he was ahead of me through the entire race. It was quite hilarious. I didn't care whether I came in first or I came in last. My goal was to do the race and to show up for myself. And in honoring my goal and in honoring my commitment to building my confidence in running through commitment, courage, and capability, I had a beautiful experience. I had this beautiful gift of confidence that came back to me. No one was capable of doing that work for me. I couldn't buy it. I couldn't borrow it. I couldn't steal it. I couldn't wish for it. Confidence comes through earning it. It comes from doing the hard work of these 4 steps. And the beauty of these 4 steps is that they really do build upon one another. And then we rinse and repeat. And we rinse and repeat. And that's how we start to build our confidence. Whether it's with a specific activity, whether it's building a relationship, or whether it's just honoring something that's important to ourselves, the 4 steps work. And every time we get these 4 steps into motion, they build upon one another, and it just has this beautiful effect in our lives, because the moment we get committed to something, we want to engage courage. The moment we get comfortable with courage, we want to engage capability. And wow, when we have that experience of knowing what our capability can do and how we can show up for ourselves, then we have the result of confidence. And so it's a wonderful process that truly does repeat and repeat in our lives. So as we move forward, and I've invited each of you to get committed to your goal between now and the 24th, I would invite you to engage this process. Maybe put it down on a Post-it note and stick it somewhere where you're going to see it often, and really allow these 4 steps to serve you so that you can have the beautiful outcome of increasing your confidence and feeling those deposits accumulate as well. Now, with all of this said, in having discussed buffering, indulgent emotions, in having discussed the thought cycles that go on in our lives and the desire for us to build confidence, this is why I truly believe coaching matters. This is why I believe coaching, when partnered with weight loss, is a winning combination. In coaching, what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to be open to seeing things differently. You're allowing yourself to see things through a new lens, and you're being willing and vulnerable to do the work that's required so that you can become the best version of yourself. In coaching, in this very safe space of coaching, you learn new things about yourself. You're willing to let go of past identities, past beliefs. You're willing to recognize that you are a whole and complete person, and that there are many attributes that make you who you are, and that it's not just your weight. Interestingly enough, when we gain control in one area of our lives, whether it's weight, time management, parenting, or work-life balance, when we gain control in one area of our lives, it starts to spill over and bless the other areas of our lives. And coaching gives you that opportunity to really get honest and do a true check and balance with where you're sitting in your lives with those thoughts and emotions. And that's the beautiful experience with which coaching provides. And isn't it so funny for many of us, as we've come into our coaching appointments, a lot of times we're not talking about your weight. A lot of times we're not talking about whether you honored your protocol or not. A lot of times we are talking about whether you feel confident at work, whether you feel like there's a genuine connection in your life with someone who's important in your world. A lot of times we're talking about feeling those good feelings of self-worth and validation that you want more of. And so this is the beautiful experience which coaching provides. And it has been amazing for us to make progress, not only in the weight loss component, but even more so in the personal development component. And I hope that you have experienced a lot of growth in this area for yourselves as well. And the more that you put yourself on the list and invest in your personal development through those good self-care practices, then the more you're going to experience the progress and the growth that you desire. Finally, what does this all mean and why does this all matter? It matters because it allows us an opportunity to grow and shine and really embrace change and become the individuals that we want to be. That's what this life is all about. This life is all about growth and evolvement and taking ourselves to the next level. Stagnation is boring. Stagnation is defeating. Stagnation, in my opinion, I equate stagnation with death. While it might not be a literal death of our physical body, it's an internal death of not honoring our potential. And that just, you know what, that just sounds so terrible to me. It's the last thing that I want in my life. When I look at my days and I look back on the chapters of my life that I've written, I want to know that I showed up 100%, that I asked the very best of myself and what I had to offer. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it all right, and it doesn't mean I'm going to be successful with every effort I put forth. But I want to know that I gave it 100% and that I was willing to be vulnerable and that I always asked myself to show up in the best ways possible so that I could make the most of my opportunities and I could experience growth and evolvement and confidence and love. Okay, friends, this is what I have to offer you for today with our material. Again, I hope that you will take advantage of reading the material that I've provided for you. If you have questions before our coaching appointment that you want me to entertain so I can come prepared in any of these spaces, whether it is with buffering or self-care or the indulgent emotions or dopamine or confidence, send them to me in advance. I will do my best to come prepared so that we can really get the most from our coaching time. I do want to open up our space now and allow you to ask any questions that you might have. I know we have some friends here in our space with their cameras off, and I do also appreciate and recognize that it is a busy Monday morning and that you may be putting on your makeup or driving your car and that you don't have the capacity to ask a question. Is there anyone who does have a question or would like some coaching on anything while we have these few minutes available? Okay. Okay, Jillian, let me unmute you. Come on in, friend.
It is actually a simple question. Earlier, you attached a link that you I wanted to know if you can just plug it into the chat or send it in Slack, because I don't know how to click on it and I definitely want to read that.
The dopamine one?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I will I'll see if I can in fact, if I can grab it. Are you still seeing me by chance, friends?
I see you, not your
But not the presentation? I'll see if I can grab that very quickly. And if I can put that.
Okay, cool. And if it's not good now, later is fine.
For sure. And while it's not on the paperwork, I do appreciate that I did not include that. I will, with the details of the coaching call on Wednesday night, perfect. I will be sure to include it as well. Let's see if this works. Okay. Did it show up in chat?
Let me see. I opened the chat. Not yet. No.
Not yet. Okay. And thank you. You are you are allowing me to learn something new. So thank you very much. Okay, I have put it in there. I apologize, it's not sharing. I'm not quite sure how to engage that and make sure that it shares.
Do you want me to type into the chat and see?
Yeah, why don't you do that really quick and we'll see if we can get it. Oh, I see. There you are privately. Okay.
Change it to everyone. Oh, well, let me. Oh, that's odd.
All right. Miley, I see that you're on as well. And do you have a question you would like me to entertain? Let me unmute you, friend.
I think I just did.
Okay.
Am I
you
unmuted?
Sure did. Yes, good job. How can I help you?
I just had a quick question with buffering that I've noticed, I think I buffer with podcasts. And I think podcasts are wonderful, but I noticed, I think I over listen to them when I'm not wanting to kind of face my emotions. But it's so automatic. It's such an ingrained habit to just turn to those. So do you have any suggestions for just I guess trying to increase awareness when I'm going to the buffer so that I can kind of intercept where I'm just, going to that buffer right away?
Yes, such a good question. Interestingly enough, I identified a lot of the negative behaviors that people buffer with: porn, video games, sleeping, shopping. We can engage and buffer with positive behaviors too, and positive activities, overworking, even exercise. We can get out of alignment with exercise and taking in good content. Now, I love podcasts too. In fact, I love good material. It's the minute I decided I was going to get engaged with my life, I was on fire and I wanted to consume everything that was amazing and everything that was available. And it was like drinking water. I couldn't get enough of it. And so, yes, podcast, good book on my Audible account. I really leaned into those heavily. And what I would suggest is, maybe you set a window of time, an amount of time that you allow for your podcasts, that you allow for that material to come in and serve you. Because while it's beautiful and abundant and it really does empower us to feel better, we can come into this space of over-consuming and not taking action. So I would ask you and invite you to do two things. Set an amount of time, and then maybe allow yourself to have a 5-minute writing window after the time ends so that you can feel a little bit of conclusion or resolution in what you've consumed. Or take one takeaway and be how can I apply that today? So I would invite you to transition from consuming into engagement and take that into an action step so that you can feel like it's at work in your life and you're feeling a beautiful result from what you're consuming. But for sure, we can consume even on these good things and not do, and also not show up for the hard work that's required. Just because we're listening to good things doesn't mean we're doing our work and we're producing good things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. Thanks. I feel like that'll help me be better balanced so that there's a balance of creating with the consumption.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. So I would keep it to a window, or maybe it's always on just, while you're doing your hair and makeup, or when you are in the carpool line. And so, maybe you associate it with a specific activity that happens daily for you. So, it's kind of a reward. Oh, I get to have my podcast at 2:30 because I'm going to go drive carpool. And while you're sitting in that carpool line, you have that 20 to 30 minutes or however long it is to enjoy. And then you're like, okay, that was awesome. Now I need to implement. I like to consume as well. And I have to be very careful not to allow that be out of balance in my life also. Jillian, did you see that link? Did it come up?
Let me see.
The dopamine link?
Yeah. No, in the chat?
Yeah.
No, I don't. Oh, yep, there it is. Got it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Hopefully others who are wanting to see it can see it in that chat as well. I will include it again with the details for our Wednesday live coaching call. Are there any other questions I can entertain from friends on the Zoom call? Okay, to my friends who are watching this recording, please submit any questions you have as well. If you guys do have a question you want me to entertain for a Wednesday night coaching topic, I would love to take that. And if I can have it in advance, then I can prepare in advance. And if you share it with me in the moment when we're together, that's fine as well. But know that I would love to see you in this space. I hope you will join me, and I'm going to dedicate about an hour, 5 o'clock Pacific time. I'll dedicate an hour making that available for anyone who wants to come into Zoom, and we can have a live call. I'm going to use my whiteboard again with a little more skill and proficiency, and we'll enjoy kind of seeing that tool in place so everyone can gain the benefit of learning from one another in this coaching space. Bring whatever you want to bring to the table. It can be weight related, it can be time management related, it can be, personal development related. It'll be a fun opportunity for us to learn from one another. Okay, friends, thank you for joining me. We're ending a few minutes early. I sure hope that you appreciated this material. Confidence is where it's at. I love confidence. Remember, it's an emotion, it's a choice, it requires practice. The more we do it, the more comfortable we'll become with it, just like riding that bicycle and driving the car. Have a beautiful week, and I hope your Mother Day was amazing. Take care. Bye, friends.
Bye.
Bye.